Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Thank you so much for joining Zoom In with Renee. Today, my guest is Krystle Kaul. She's running for USCongress as a Democratic candidate from the state of Virginia's 10th Congressional District. It's currently, the position is held by Jennifer Wexton. Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton is not going to be running again, so it's an open seat. Krystle Kaul brings in a wealth of national and security defense expertise. She has been the former director of strategic communications at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. She has also been chief of political military intelligence night cell in the Department of Defense, and Krystle has served as an advisor in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. That's a great expertise in the national defense security area. Let me start from that point. How do you plan to strengthen law enforcement, border security, and crisis response?
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. As you mentioned, the majority of my career has been in national security and defense. I think that when it comes to border security, immigration issues, I believe that there is always nuance and context in when looking at issues. I don't take a hardline, black and white approach to things, which is why I'm a moderate national security Democrat. So I just want to make that clear. I stand socially liberal and fiscally conservative. On immigration, I think that we have to look at case-by-case scenarios. Obviously, if people are entering illegally, we have measures in place to counter that. But at the same time, there are cases of children who are, for example, under the age of 10, that are put into, they're put into holding. They're in very poor conditions, and when you watch a lot of the footage on this, it's just it's really quite unfair and brutal. And I think that we have to also have some humanity when looking at some of these issues. So it's not a blanket answer of all illegal immigration we stop, but we have to also look at, are we dealing with children? Are we dealing with minors? Are we dealing with, in some cases, even toddlers? So that's what I would say on immigration, that it has to also be on a case-by-case basis.
On an international level, how do you want to address the issue of terrorism? Do you want to engage foreign countries? Because you have gone for delegations as a national defense security advisor. So how do you plan to combat terrorism on a global level?
Yeah, so that's been the bread and butter of my work: counterterrorism, counterinsurgency. It's what I've studied and what I've done. I think that there are a few ways to look at it. So one thing I'll say, interestingly enough, back in 2005, there was a study done where, because obviously all the war on terror efforts from the US that was on a global scale was decreasing international terrorism. However, it was increasing in Pakistan, not because there's anything particular with Pakistan, but a lot of it had to do with an assessment of schools, and there were an increasing number of madrasas, in particular 14,000. And there wasn't a counterbalance of liberal arts education, of the study of humanities. And so there was an effort that I was part of with the Deputy Director of the War on Terror, General Castellan, to actually create what is called re-education efforts. So these were schools that were run by lay preachers, that were run by ministers. They were, different volunteers in Jordan, Yemen, Qatar. It was a pilot program they did, and it had 100% success rate. So essentially, they took a lot of the boys that and girls that came from some of these madrasas amongst different countries and were being trained to become suicide bombers, that were, brainwashed, and it was a part of a reverse brainwashing effort. And they put them through this school, taught them just, again, more of a liberal arts education, and then gave them, just a tiny bit of seed money and maybe a very basic job. And they didn't have one turnover case. Unfortunately, the program did not, it didn't get enough funding as it deserved, especially due to the level of success it had. And there were a lot of 3- and 4-star generals that were big advocates. As I said, General Castle, he's a 3-star general. He went on to become the superintendent of West Point, a very close mentor of mine, who were pushing this, but it just, unfortunately, the push for it was not enough. So I think that's one where we should look at seriously, the re-education efforts, and just, again, having the understanding about tribalism. So if you look at a case of Afghanistan, a big reason why some of our efforts were not as successful there is because in the West, we have this mentality of, you look at state, the federal government as being the powerful body. When you go into some Eastern countries, maybe like Afghanistan, the power is held by tribal leaders. They are the power brokers. And the discussions, the dialogue was not exactly happening at the tribal level. It was happening with Afghan local police. It was happening with the government, centralized government, which was not that powerful. So I think understanding the cultural context of what you're dealing with is also going to help to counter to counter terrorism in a lot of these nations. And yes, drone warfare is used. We, have the military might, the U.S. and allied countries to go in, and sometimes it is necessary. And I've been on, as you said, I led an ISIS crisis cell during a time of war under Secretary Austin, our current Secretary of Defense. I was co-located with targeters. We were on a night shift cell 7 days a week, and we were kinetic. So it's not. In some cases, it's needed, but again, you get intel traffic and you understand when and where it's applicable. But there are other measures you can take to try to help decrease international terrorism on a global scale.
That is very important these days, especially when we're going through such challenging, turbulent times.
Yes.
Let's talk some of the issues that are pertinent to your district. That's the 10th Congressional District from Virginia.
Issues, yeah. So in my district, obviously there's a host of issues to be addressed, but the 3 in particular on my platform that I am very concerned about are education, better care, and public safety. So in terms of education, I think that the challenge that we do face in District 10 is sometimes some of the teachers who come in may be a bit junior, they may not have enough training. It's been a consistent issue where our neighboring District 11 will have some of the teachers that just have more training and might be a bit more senior, and so this causes a problem with some parents that obviously want their kids to have the best education, and there are limited private schools. There's for example, Thomas Jefferson, they call TJ, is in District 11. There's limited admissions to get in there. And there's only so many that you can actually get acceptance to. And you have a district with 820,000 constituents in District 10. So as a result of that, I would really try to push hard to help increase the educational budget, to help put a lot more emphasis on skills training for our teachers, and to get it to a level where parents are comfortable to have their kids go into these schools and know that they're getting the best education they possibly can.
Have you gotten any endorsements yet?
So I will be reaching out to the unions. I've already started getting contacted.
Share some of the towns that are in your district.
Sure. The big cities are Ashburn, which has a heavy Indian American population, just FYI, Sterling, Leesburg, Dulles, where you have the international airport, Chantilly, Manassas, Warrenton. You have a small sliver of Fairfax, and also just keep in mind there was redistricting efforts that happened, and so this, the borders have changed recently. So those are some of the larger areas in District 10.
What are some of the demographics in the district?
Sure. The median age is 38. It is a 40% minority district. So you've got about around 13% Asians, 11% Latinos, around 2% Native Americans, 3.77% Italians, or I believe it's around 4% of Arab Americans. So it's a pretty diverse district, but the challenge is that we haven't had a person of color serve. Fortunately, we've had a woman, but not a person of color, definitely not a woman of color. And I think that there is a strong desire for that in the district to reflect the minorities that we have here.
There are other Democratic candidates and Republicans running in your district?
There are a few, yes.
What are your chances?
I think my chances are really high. And I don't say that to sound overconfident. I say that because for a few reasons. One, so I actually live in the district versus some of the others do not actually live in the district who are currently FEC registered. Two, I've actually walked in the shoes of the average constituent, meaning the bread and butter of this district is predominantly working with or for the Department of Defense. So most people here are military, they're veterans, they are federal government civilians, they are defense contractors or federal contractors, or they're small business owners that have government contracts. I would say that is the makeup of the majority of people who live in this district. And I have spent most of my career, almost 2 decades, working in defense consulting, defense contracting, working as a GS15 director for the Department of Defense, as a small business owner with a defense technology company. I help technology firms get defense contracts from small 8As, disabled veteran, women-owned, to mid-sized to large corporations such as Intel Corporation and McKinsey, Bain, Bank of New York Mellon. So I have walked the shoes of most of these constituents. I know the daily issues. I know the struggles of not knowing if your contract is going to come up. You're working for, let's say, Leidos, and you're being underbid by L3 Harris, for example. This happens a lot. So there are stressors that you, unless you've actually lived it, it's be very hard to know what that's like, and dealing with government budgets and slogging all night on a proposal on RFPs when you're trying to get, and you're just a small business and you're trying to get access and you don't have the relationship. So there are a lot of things that I know intimately well, and that is something that is where I think a lot of the constituents in my district really relate to me and make me a very viable candidate in that way. And also being a GS15, I know I wasn't in the military, but it is the equivalent of a full bird colonel. So I've worked very closely with a lot of veterans groups, wounded warriors, and I understand issues of veterans in the military because I've been co-located and I've been supporting the military for most of my career.
You're also a business owner and you have a technology company?
A defense technology company, yes. So my company helps technology firms acquire defense contracts.
Let's go to healthcare, a very critical issue in our country and globally. Having affordable healthcare, patient-centric care, and accessible healthcare. How do you want to address these issues?
Yeah, I think that unfortunately our healthcare system in this country needs some revamping. There are parts of it that are very broken. We need to make healthcare much more accessible to people, especially small business owners. It's just from prescription drugs to seeing specialists. The rates are exorbitant. The system is so overly complicated for the average American. And I think that without being so extreme to take a model of the UK or something in Europe, I don't think that that's really viable here. I do think there's ways to reform our system here where we can make it a lot more accessible and affordable, and just put more pressure on some of the insurance companies in terms of a lot of the rates that they charge. And I've spoken with a lot of medical professionals, and even they are very they're really frustrated with the insurance companies because, they are trained, they spent 10, 15, 20 years, right, to acquire their expertise, and that's what you're paying for. But then they get paid only a small amount of that. And the insurance company is the broker who takes whatever X amount, and they get to just determine what those rates are on a case-by-case basis. So I think that there's room for improvement and ways to reform that process where the actual patient is not so overburdened with exorbitant bills or surprise bills that end up coming to them, and that's on our government to try to fix that. It's just gotten to a point where we have so many Americans who don't have health care, and then if they do get sick, if they do go to a hospital, they could end up with a bill for thousands of dollars that they just can't pay. And so this is a pan-wide issue that we need to address and do it quickly.
And then we also have physician burnout.
I agree. I mean, they're working overtime. I applaud all the doctors in this country, and I don't think that they're to blame. Many people put blame on them. Oh, you're charging me so much. No, it's those offices, those doctors will get just a percentage. But those insurance companies walk away with, exorbitant sums for every visit, for every procedure that happens. And there should be some accountability. There should be some measures in place in terms of how much you're allowed to actually charge for these types of services.
When we're looking at our economy, one of the big concerns right now is household debt. We're looking at home mortgages. And an average American household has almost over $100,000 in debt. And we're looking at $1 trillion of household debt on a national level. Almost 77% of American households have debts. How do you combat this issue? What are some of your policies that you want to bring out to address this?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm also, I'm a homeowner myself. I also have a mortgage too, more than a six-figure mortgage. So I definitely understand you, and I see that. I see that interest that acquires. I think that there are a lot of factors when it comes to real estate. So I'm going to just zone in on something particular to my district, which is that with Amazon coming in and headquartering itself in Virginia, it created a bit of a real estate crisis, right, for locals. Literally overnight, I mean, from the announcement of Amazon coming in to when they actually came in, prices have doubled and tripled for condos, for homes all across, from Arlington all the way out through to Warrenton, right? So it's, when it comes to real estate, I mean, some of these things can be planned for, can be predicted for, and I'm not knocking Amazon. I think that they're also creating a lot of jobs here, which is great. I think that there's a whole tech boom. There's great partnerships between defense and technology that are happening. But I do think that trying to help an average home buyer get a house is something that we need to be cognizant of. And so I know that it's a bit of a catch-22, right? I mean, there was a pushback on Amazon coming into the Bronx, but Amazon coming in has also helped, industry. But it shouldn't be a case where it has created this housing market crisis. So I think that we can look to put in some pressure, some kind of measures in place where we don't have that happening, where houses are just doubling and tripling in price as a result. And then also with COVID. With COVID, there was just limited supply. There was a shortage on the market. And so people were having an issue where there was just a lot more demand than supply. And you have people who could put a house on the market and then add $100K over asking price. And people would just have no choice. Their hands were tied and they had to take it. Interest rates are exorbitant, right? Nothing like they used to be, right? I mean, I know myself, I was looking to buy a house and it was 8-9% versus the traditional 2.5, 3 to 4%. So even that has tripled. And I think there are ways we can look at trying to counter some of that. Try to keep interest rates at a more reasonable level. Maybe the 2 to 3 was too low for some time, people argue, but obviously 9 is too high. So we got to come to a middle ground and figure out how do we just make buying a house a little bit more accessible and easier for the average American, for the average Virginian.
And as an Indian American, what is your vision for U.S. Congress?
So if elected, I would like to join the India caucus. I want to fight for Indian American issues. I think that we are a community. We are the wealthiest community, wealthiest minority in this country. We have succeeded in almost every industry, from medicine, engineering, technology, business, across the board, right? We have high rates of Indian Americans who are graduating from top institutions around the country, Ivy Leagues. So we're highly educated, very successful, but we're extremely underrepresented. And this is something I was passionate about when I was 19 years old. I was publishing articles in News India Times, if you recall that paper, and I was writing about how we need more Indian Americans in politics. At that time, we really just had Bobby Jindal. We didn't have 5 members of Congress, and I'm really proud today of those 5 who are in. I personally know Representative Khanna, Representative Ami Bera, and Shita Nagar, and I think that we just need more numbers of folks who are in, and folks who are.
And we need more women.
Yeah, we do need more women. Exactly. It can't just be Indian men, like more. We have Representative Jayapal, but we do need more women, definitely, and it's okay, and we absolutely should. We have a right to fight for issues that affect us. I mean, education is a big issue that impacts Indian Americans. That's something that we can lobby for. I know there are certain groups that have their own particular issues, right? Whether it's H-1Bs, getting relatives to come from India, right? The process it's harrowing. It can take a year to 2 years for them to get a visa to come to, see relatives. There are concerns about Hindu phobia, concerns about just discrimination against Indian Americans across the country. There are still acts of discrimination that I see firsthand. There's was a gentleman even in my district that was wrongfully accused because of being a Sikh American, and so I think that sometimes we're a bit blind to it because we think, well, we're so successful, or we have wealth, or we have education, and we've reached certain levels. But I think that discrimination does not. We're not above it in any way. It can happen to any individual. Nobody checks your net worth. Nobody checks your academic credentials when you're walking down the street, and maybe you're wearing a turban and you're a Sikh individual, or your skin is a bit tanner than another individual. I think that is very prevalent. I've definitely faced it myself. I've faced it in academic institutions. I've faced it in work, and I know many cases of others who have faced it as well. And it's not just. I think people think that this only happens in certain pockets of our country, but it definitely happens in urban centers as well. And we are at a point where we deserve the representation. I think there are lots of groups that have it. I think I'm very proud of the Jewish community for how much representation they have in Congress. And they value that. And I think that as an Indian American community, we should also have the same level of political participation, and we should fight and advocate for our culture, for our heritage, our holidays, our children, and protect our next generation and give them a better future here.
And you speak 8 languages. I speak 4, and I thought, that's great.
I like talking. I like communicating. I like people. I can say that much. And it's frustrating for me if I meet someone and I can't actually speak to them in their language. So I have invested a lot of time and effort to try to learn these languages, and there's nothing like it. I've seen that. I've seen that living in the Middle East, living in Spain and Italy, traveling around India. It's when you speak to someone in their own language, it's a level of connection that it's just unmatched.
Absolutely.
And so that's a big reason as to why I went and endeavored to learn these
Creates a
things.
stronger bonding. And the primaries are June 18th of 2024.
Yes.
Democratic primaries. So,
Yes.
Krystle, what is your message to our viewers?
That I am, again, I'm a moderate national Democrat. I am socially liberal, meaning I am very pro women's rights, pro LGBTQ, pro same sex marriage. I am fiscally conservative, and I am very big on national security and defense. That has been the core of my career and the core of my values is upholding national security, defense, protecting our homeland. And I understand that these issues are, especially in current times as well, is something that's on the hearts and minds of most Americans, and especially those in my district. And so I will say that I want to uphold those values in Congress, and I want to represent the entire district and also the Indian American community. I think that it's time that we bring in a sixth representative in this country. And I'm from New York, so I've grown up there, and I've spent nearly half my life there and half my life in Virginia.
Well, thank you very much. Krystle Kaul, Democratic candidate running from the 10th Congressional District in the state of Virginia. And the primaries are on June 18, 2024. Wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Dr. Mehrra.
I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Stay healthy, stay positive.